Please help me welcome a good friend of the RPOA and a great human, Ben Eubanks. Ben, welcome.
So glad to be here, my friend. Wonderful to meet you in person, too, by the way. I told you that last night, but goodness, it's been 2 years of chatting and Zooming and everything else, and finally get to see her smiling face in person. That's probably priceless. So glad to be here with all of you. So looking forward to this conversation. I tell stories, I share some data, I hopefully give you something new to think about, and so that's the plan for this. That sound good? All right. We have all been in the middle of a lot of disruption in the last few years. And one of the stories I love to tell to illustrate this, a couple of years ago, a storm came through our local area and blew off a piece of the roof of a building on my dad's property. Kind of like what you see here, that corrugated stuff. And he said, hey, I've got to go fix this thing. I don't want to do it, but I've got to go take care of it. And I said, hey, I'll do it. I'll fix it. I'll admit to you right now that these hands were not made for building or fixing, okay? They're great at typing. They're not so good for repairing things. So I go, get the materials, go over there, and for whatever reason, I'm going to try to prove myself and make this happen. So I go, and the ladder won't even reach the edge of the roof. So I'm failing before I've even started. And I realized if I drive the truck in the building and I put the ladder in the back of the truck, I can get out onto the roof. So I climb out, I pull the materials up, I patch the hole, and it looks darn good. I am so thrilled. I can't wait to get down and tell everybody. And then I realized that I climbed out the hole to get onto the roof. And I just closed the hole in the roof. And so I debate how many bones I'll break jumping off the side and everything else. Finally able to get down, obviously, because I'm here today. But sometimes when we solve one problem, we create another one, right? There's always something else around the corner, and that's one of the things that you've all seen front and center. Suddenly there's this new demand, especially in the last couple of years, where employers said, hey, we can't hire anybody. Who's going to help us? Who's going to help us make this happen? And they turn to you in the room to make that happen. And you're like, heck yeah, let's do it. Let's step up. Let's make this happen. And then suddenly you can't find anybody either. You can't find the candidates that they couldn't find. And it's created all kinds of challenges and disruption and difficulty. And in spite of that, you're going to see some of the data today from this brand new study that shows employers value and appreciate the relationships that they have with their RPO providers. So excited to be with you. You heard the fun stuff there from Lamise. The only thing she didn't share is that I'm the dad of 4, 12 and under, and ice cream is my love language, in case you're curious. So someone offered me coffee this morning. I don't do coffee, but I do ice cream. So if we're going to have a chat over something, we'll find a cup, we'll have a scoop of ice cream, and we'll noodle over some of the data, some of the research. So this study that I'm going to talk through today, here's what it comes from. We surveyed these talent acquisition leaders about what their value is they're getting from the RPO, what sort of things they care about, what their priorities are in that relationship, how they select, if they're thinking about changing, what's in that. So here's all the numbers and the data and everything else about that in case you're curious. But the goal of this, the hope of this, you never know when you're starting a research study what's going to come out of it, but the hope of this was to really spotlight the value that RPO brings to the employer community. We want to understand what they're getting, what they're expecting, and how those things match up or not. And if they don't match up, how you can align with those things you're looking for. And if it does, let's celebrate the heck out of that. It's a fun place to be. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a quick snippet on some of the things I'm seeing in the space, a little bit of the current environment. You're living it, so I'm going to keep that really brief. I'm going to talk about how employers value those relationships. What sort of things, if you were paying attention to the slides earlier, you saw a little preview of that. Some of those things they're looking for, some of those things they expect. And then we're going to look at some of those things that employers are expecting from those relationships. Some things they're getting, some things they're not. Some of the stats may actually surprise you. So all of you, again, are living this every day. So we're talking about this at breakfast this morning, about these different companies who are laying people off. It's a weird time because at the same time some companies are laying people off, the same day I pulled these headlines, I also pulled these headlines. Employers need people, they're trying to recruit, they can't find enough talent. Where in the world are all the people? Where'd they go? The book that I'm writing right now, finishing up, that's coming out later this year, it's called Talent Scarcity. It's to answer that question. I've got more from employers in the last 2 years than probably you have as well, which is where are all the people? Where'd they go? Can we bring them back? So we're digging at a lot of those things. I pulled these 2 sets of headlines the very same day. I don't know that that's ever been the case, and definitely not in my working lifetime when I was recruiting day to day, or any of my times as a researcher where we had these two different dynamics happening at the very same time. Anybody else agree it's kind of weird? Kind of strange? Yes, okay. Making sure you're all still awake. Here's a couple of things we're seeing. Let's take it down a level to the candidate level. So in our study this year on talent acquisition, we did earlier this summer, we found that 1 out of 3 candidates told us when they accept an offer that they are committed to that company. The other 2 out of 3 said, I'm going to keep my options open anywhere from a few weeks until whenever I feel like it. I'm always going to be open to another offer. I feel very old-fashioned when I say I accept an offer, I'm committing to that company, but that's apparently a changing social expectation. And speaking of changing expectations and what's socially acceptable, this challenge of ghosting is going through the roof. And I've got bad news for you. It's going to get worse. When we look at the data on ghosting, we see that it's actually age correlated. So someone who is 25 is more likely than someone who's 35, who's more likely than someone who's 45, and so on. So the people who are 55 years old and older in the workplace are the least likely to ghost an employer. And guess what? They're going to steadily age out. And the ones who are doing it the most are going to continue aging in to the workforce. They're going to take a bigger portion. So this challenge of ghosting and this hope that maybe this is a weird fad that's going to go away, none of the data tell us right now that that's going to happen. What we're seeing is going to continue and it's going to get worse, unfortunately. Wish I had a little bit more positive spin to put on that, but I have none. Sorry. And then last but not least, we've been doing a regular pulse on the workforce for the last year on how many of you are planning on quitting your jobs, how many of you are planning on leaving. And we see in our most recent data set from August that still 1 in 4 people are planning on quitting their jobs in the coming 6 months. So there's still going to be this turnover. There's still going to be this opportunity, if you want to look at it that way. There's still going to be this turnover, this shift, this disruption that we've all been seeing firsthand for the last couple of years. It's going to continue on, at least for the foreseeable future. All right. Told you I'd keep that very brief. This is what you're living. I wanted to give you a couple stats to think about that, though. Let's transition over and talk about this value of an RPO relationship. There's a couple of quick headline stats I'll give you. If you want to take a picture, great. Lamise has a copy of this. We'll make sure and share that with you so that you can, if you want that. But I always love it when you take pictures so I can be like, oh, just let me know, I'll pose. I'll do my best Vanna White impression for that. So a couple of things we're seeing in the data. Number one, when we ask employers, does having an RPO actually influence and change the hiring metrics you're actually able to achieve? 97% of them said that it helps to improve those metrics. And we could spend a lot longer than the 30 minutes that I've got going deeper into this because that number is not static. Depending on how we cut the data, depending on the kind of relationship that company says they have, depending on how long of a tenure they have with RPO, that number starts to shift and ebb and flow and change. Every time I cut the data and look at it, there's a gap there. And there's some really interesting insights that I'm continuing to pull out of this. Have a report coming up soon that'll be shared with you. But we also have some incredible handouts of some of these stats that we're going to give you after the session's over so you can have a little takeaway to take back home with you. In addition to that, we see that about 9 out of 10 companies say that having this relationship with the right RPO allows them to focus on other things that matter. And I see this in all the areas of the research we do across HRO and BPO and everything else. That's consistent. We expect that. But to see 9 out of 10 companies essentially agree with that blows me away. If we were going to get together as a group here, here's how statistics are hard, right? If we're going to get together, 9 out of 10 of us probably couldn't agree on where we wanted to eat for lunch, okay? So to have 9 out of 10 employers in the open market say that they believe this, it's a really powerful statement. It's a testament to the value you're bringing to them. Here's a couple rapid fire ones for you. I keep hearing from my friends in the RPO space that scaling up and down, right? Right now, it may be the scaling down piece of that for some types of hiring, but being able to scale up and down easily is a big deal. Employers say that yes, check that box. The ROI, their clarity on how hiring affects the business. I've talked to more leaders in the last 2 years on the talent acquisition and the HR side who are saying, you know what, suddenly my boss is asking me what it costs us to not have a person ready to take this job, and we've never had to look at that before. We've always assumed that the people are going to be there, they're going to be readily available. I was writing a piece recently, and I used the analogy of Years ago, many, many years ago in the manufacturing space, it was very common to have big stockpiles of inventory just laying around everywhere, and we're ready to build something, we just go grab it off the shelf and we build it. And then someone said, hey, wait a minute, there's this thing called just-in-time where you can just get it when you need it and you can build it then. And so employers stopped stockpiling stuff and started using just-in-time to manufacture things. And the same way that's the way we approach hiring, because we always assume that there's going to be someone else to go and grab. And suddenly when there's not, that creates all this disruption, all this challenge, and employers and leaders outside of the talent function say, wait a minute, we thought this was always going to be a constant. Suddenly we have to change how we're thinking about this. We have to understand, where is the priority? If we can only get one person, where's the best place to put that one person to create the most value for us as a company? And having an RPO in place, employers are telling us, helps them see that line of sight more clearly. And last but not least, the ROI has been positive for more than half of them. That is affected by a lot of things, including the length of that relationship. The longer someone has that relationship in place, the more likely they are to say that the ROI has been a positive one. You probably know that. It's hard to get a full understanding of everything that company's about and how they work and what their values are and the kind of things they really care about when they're selecting candidates. It's hard to get all those things in the first month when you start a new engagement with them. You need to take some time to build up that relationship and understand those things and really get what they're about to be able to align with that. I've had some fun conversations with Pam and some of the others on the RPOA board about cost as a factor in this and the decision for employers to select an RPO. And those conversations in general, if I'm going to broad brush paint with this, is if they care only about price, they're not for us. They need to go somewhere else, because we are here to deliver a premium service. We're going to deliver it really well, but we're not going to be haggling and fighting over what this, down to the penny. It's not worth that for us. Someone else wants this, we'll deliver it to them. So we see in the data, I was very curious to see how employers responded to that. So for those that are not using one yet, the number one reason they say they're not using it, they're not using an RPO, they're not partnering yet, is because of cost. They say that's the biggest barrier, the biggest holdback for them. But for those who are currently using an RPO, when it comes to selection factors, the things they said are very important for picking their partner, cost was way down the list, next to the bottom. So not nearly as big of a priority for those that are currently using. And not only that, when we look at those who are changing, the people who are companies who said, yes, we're using one, we're thinking about changing either in the next year or the next 2 years, those companies, only a small fraction of them say cost is the reason they're looking to change. So the cost is not as big of a deal as we think it might be. It only is for those who aren't using it yet. The ones that are, they start to get into the ROI piece of that, they start to see the value of that, and it changes how they think about the price component. Was that not incredible? Seeing a lot of smiles, okay. No one's dancing yet, but I'm hoping by the end, someone is going to be dancing, and it better not be me. Hands were not made for building, feet were not made for dancing. There's a trend here. Okay, so let's take a look at what employers are wanting from RPO relationships. What are they seeking? What are they hoping for when they come to the table and they're looking for a partner? I want to tell you what they're looking for. There's this incredible book called Upstream. If you've never read it, one of the analogies they use in the book, you and a friend are going to go and sit down and have a picnic down here on the Riverwalk. It's beautiful when the sun's actually out. Whew, goodness. The shade yesterday was freezing on that tour. I'm from Alabama. We don't do the cold very well, okay? We can't handle that. So you're going to sit down with a friend here on the Riverwalk and have a picnic, and you're getting settled, and suddenly you hear a child screaming. They're in the river, floating down the river. So you jump in, you rescue that child, you pull them out. Whew, goodness, okay, everything's safe, we're good. Okay, let's sit down, let's have our picnic. Hear another child screaming, floating down the river. Can't swim. You jump in, you rescue that child. And you keep doing this, and you keep doing this. And finally, your friend turns around and walks off and says, hey, where are you going? We got to save these kids. He said, I'm going to go upstream and find the jerk who's throwing them in. Okay? Employers are looking for someone that helps them think upstream. Helps them think not just about the problem. They know the problem. They can't find people. They know the problem already. But they want someone that helps them think farther upstream about how can we solve this in a more business-aligned way? How can we solve this in a more innovative way? How can we tackle this problem that we're facing in a way we haven't already thought of? That's why they've arrived at the table to have a conversation with you. If they could think of it, if they could do it themselves, they wouldn't need any of the support that you provide. So they're looking for that upstream thinking. When we look at the reasons, the factors that are most important, right from top to bottom here for employers when it comes to selecting their provider, we had a good discussion this morning with some of the crew there at the table about the importance of technology and automation in this, but they're looking for a couple of different things. Employers, some of them have a really good understanding of the tools, the technologies, the ATSs, the CRMs, all the different categories of recruiting technology. They have a good understanding of those. Many of them don't. Many of them don't have the time, they don't have the insight, they don't have the subject matter expertise to be able to understand all those pieces of it. So they come to an RPO looking for not just service, but also a technology-enabled service to help them do that. And not only that, but number two there is the analytics, the strategic insights. Help me figure out what's going on. Help me figure out what's the best step, what's the next best step to take. It's not always clear until you can look at the data. Then, as I told you earlier, costs way down the list in terms of their priorities for selecting their provider. Okay. I found this last night. I'm a last minute slide kind of guy. I don't know about you. But I told Lamitas that I've got to get this in there because this was so powerful to me. So we look at those companies. I broke them out for those that said we have a positive ROI or we don't. Those companies that say they have a positive ROI from their RPO relationship are tremendously more likely, 725% more likely, to be getting support from that RPO along hiring strategy and business alignment. If you want to turn the inverse of that, it's virtually impossible to get a positive ROI from an RPO relationship if you're not having that as part of that. If you're just asking for bodies, if you're just trying to fill roles, if you're just trying to put people in seats, you're going to miss out on the value, the full value that an RPO can provide. All right. We come now to the interactive portion of our session. Guess what hiring metric companies prioritize if they do not have an ROI from that relationship? If they have no ROI, what metric do they prioritize? Say it again. Time to fill. How quickly can you put that rear end in that seat? If they have no ROI, that is the number one thing that they prioritize from their RPO. Does that surprise you? Not really. And yet to have that stat is so powerful to me. It's one of those things you probably knew kind of in the back of your mind. You're like, yeah, okay. But to actually know that now with the data is so powerful. The maturity of that relationship and how long they've been working with an RPO also affects the kind of things they're looking for. Someone who is just starting out, less than 2 years is actually the break point we looked at. They look at very tactical things. Help me with internal hiring. Help me with diversity recruiting. Help me with employer branding. Help me with some of those things that are a little more specific, tactical. For those who have had an RPO relationship for more than 4 years, they're twice as likely to be focused on that business alignment piece, which we talked about just a minute ago. Really helping them understand how all these things we're doing over here from a hiring activity standpoint align with the things the business needs from us. Are we solving the problems the business has? Or are we just filling another job, closing another rec? That's a treadmill that isn't very pleasant. When you can see the outcome, when you can see the impact and understand how it fits into the bigger picture the business is trying to solve, it's an incredible place to be. So the takeaway for me on that one is that there's short-term value. We can help you with these things, but we should be working towards this longer-term specific set of alignment with your overall hiring strategy. If it's only limited to those specific and tactical things, you're never going to be able to get to the other stuff that actually matters. And as I just showed you a second ago, that ROI piece is tied into that business alignment. Okay. So we asked about what are you getting currently from your provider, and that's the light blue that you see here. We also asked, what do you want? What do you prefer? What are you hoping to get? And that's the dark blue that you see here. They could pick whatever they wanted, as many as they wanted. And as you can see, in general, there's pretty good alignment. It's not too far off. The last two I highlighted here, though, because they're things they're asking for more often than they're getting. One of them is that business alignment piece we've talked about here a couple of times. And the other one is benchmarking, really helping us to understand how we stack up, how we compare against other companies like us in our industry that are our size, companies that have similar types of hiring challenges or types of hiring roles. How do we stack up against them? Do we look like them? Is our pay like them? Right? Are they offering this benefit that's killing us in every single offer because we don't have that in the mix? What are we doing and how are we aligned with those other companies? There's an action item to think about a bit. Find out if the companies you're working with want those kind of things. If you're not already offering them, and if they do, there's an idea. All right. We look at the data. We see that about 1 out of every 3 companies is thinking about changing providers within the next 12 months. And again, if you were watching earlier on the slides, you saw already what that number one reason is. The number one thing they're looking for, the number one reason they say that they're looking for another provider is because of misalignment in the values or the culture of the RPO and the company, which surprised me a little bit. I expected to see their service quality. I expected to see maybe even cost in there somewhere. But the number one reason came out as this misalignment with the cultures. I was talking to a good friend the other day. Many of you probably know him in the space. I was talking to Kelly a little bit ago, and I didn't know she actually worked with him. And I was asking him about what he's seen there. And he said, yes, we've absolutely had deals that either died on the vine or deals that we get up and running and we realize pretty quickly, hey, wait a minute, no, they're just looking for this. We thought they were going to ask for this. They're just looking for this. We can't get them to move. We can't get them to budge. They don't think. They're just see us as this very transactional sort of relationship. That's not the place to be. That's not where the real value is found, as we've already established. And so that misalignment on what they're looking for is the biggest reason employers are looking to change. I don't know if you have questions you ask. I don't know if you have a way that you evaluate that when you're going through and vetting someone as a prospect. But if you're not, that would be something worthwhile to take a look at. I put that little asterisk there to remind myself of something, and I'm trying to remember what that was. The companies that have a positive ROI off of their relationship are 3 times more likely to prioritize that cultural alignment piece than companies who have a negative ROI from their RPO relationship. So it factors into that equation as well. All right. I'm going to close with this story. I'm a little early. Sorry. Is that okay with you? I can dance. I can ask questions. You can ask questions. How about that? We'll take some questions. I want to close this story, though, because I love this one. So when I was about 8 years old, that summer, a couple days a week, I spent at my grandmother's house. I don't know why. I just did. I'd never done it before and never did it after that. That's that 1 year I spent a couple days a week with my grandmother. And pretty soon I would get bored. I'd look for something to do. There's only so much cartoons you can watch. I had reached the capacity. And so she had this old bicycle, looked kind of like that one, behind the garage. So I'd ride up and down the driveway and I'd attack the aliens and all the stuff that an 8-year-old boy does. And I come riding around the house. I didn't realize my grandfather had just got home from work. And right when he got home, he went out to the garage and he got an extension cord and he strung it to the house and ran it in the window of the house. He closed the windows on it so the cord wouldn't sag and fall to the ground. So I'm riding around the house, top speed. I'd already done it 10 times. I knew the way was clear. And I come around the corner and I wake up laying on the ground. I don't know what has happened, and my neck hurts. And I had hit that cord right there, going full speed on that bicycle, and was completely stunned, couldn't breathe for a second, was completely out of it, and completely surprised. Sometimes the changes that hit us when it comes to the world of recruiting, when it comes to trying to hire people, when it comes to the changing market that you're trying to guess what's around the next corner, sometimes those changes, we can see them coming, we can tell what they're going to be, we can start preparing for them, and sometimes we have no clue what's around the next corner. And regardless of what happens, my crystal ball is broken. I can't predict what's going to be next. I can't predict what's going to happen in the next few months or in the coming year when it comes to the talent market and everything else. But what I do know is there will be things we don't expect. There will be things that surprise us. But in spite of all of that, everything that the data tell me about the relationships that you have with the employers that are out there tell me that they value that support, that they get a tremendous amount of benefits from that, and that they are better off for it. So that's what I had to share with you on the new study. That's some of the fantastic findings there. And again, we'll have some new things coming out of this very soon to share with you, some additional things I'm digging into around what high-performing employers with better revenue do differently, how they value those relationships. So we've got some additional things coming out of it that I'm finding every single day that are just incredible, astounding, and frankly, paint a really very amazing picture of the work that you all are doing. Thank you.